It was a day like any other. The sun was gently setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Emily, an 8-year-old girl with large brown eyes, settled down with her guitar on a street corner, just at the corner of the main road in the neighborhood. She wore an old coat that had belonged to her grandmother, the only tangible memory she had of her, who had passed away 10 years ago. The passers-by rushed by, absorbed in the whirlpool of their thoughts, errands, and worries. But Emily paid them no mind. Her goal was clear: to collect enough money to buy her grandfather's medicine, the man who had raised her since the death of her parents. This grandfather, once so strong and tireless, was now battling an illness that was slowly sapping his strength. She gently strummed the strings of her guitar, letting the first chord ring out. The notes resonated, pure and light, in the twilight. Passers-by paused for a moment, surprised by the soft, poignant melody coming from such a frail little girl. Her voice rose, clear and emotional, telling a story of love and courage. Emily sang with all her heart, her words weaving a tapestry of memories. She remembered her grandmother, her warm arms that enveloped her every night, the stories told by the light of the fireplace. She also remembered the happy days with her grandfather, when he would carry her on his shoulders and take her to see the fireworks. Sometimes, tears welled up in her eyes, but she held them back, smiling at the few people who stopped, fascinated. A man, sitting on a bench across from her, had been watching the scene for a while. He was moved by the maturity of the young girl and the sadness that radiated from her voice. At the end of her song, he stood up, crossed the street, and approached Emily. "You're singing for your grandfather, aren't you?" he asked gently. The little girl nodded. Her eyes sparkled with shy hope. "Yes, sir. He's sick, and I need money for his medicine." The man rummaged in his pocket and pulled out a bill, which he carefully placed in Emily's guitar case. She widened her eyes when she saw the amount. It was far more than she had hoped to earn in one evening. Why are you doing this?" she stammered, puzzled. The man smiled, a smile full of kindness and tenderness. "Because I know what it's like to lose people you love, and I want to help you keep those who are still with you." The tears she had been holding back finally fell, silent. She whispered a thank you, her voice broken with emotion. The man placed a gentle hand on her shoulder before walking away. That night, Emily returned home with a lighter heart, her pockets full of the generosity of a stranger. The next morning, she rushed to the pharmacy, the list of her grandfather's medicines clutched against her chest. When she finally returned, the bag of medicines in hand, her grandfather greeted her with a tired but sincere smile. "You did it, my little one, just like always," he murmured. She nestled against him, breathing in the reassuring scent of his wool sweater, despite the weakness emanating from him. In the days that followed, the old man gradually regained his strength, enough to sit in the chair by the window and watch his granddaughter practice her guitar. Emily continued to sing every evening on her street corner, even after this unexpected act of kindness. What had started as a simple means of survival and caring for her grandfather now took on a deeper meaning. The people in the neighborhood began to recognize her, stopping more often, drawn by the sweetness of her voice and the purity of her melodies. They spoke of her, the little girl who sang for love and courage, whose notes touched hearts with a rare sincerity. One evening, as the air grew cooler and the first snowflakes began to fall on the city, a young woman stopped in front of Emily. She wore a cream wool coat and an elegant hat. Her green eyes sparkled with a mixture of wonder and compassion. When Emily finished her song, the woman crouched down to her level. "You have a beautiful voice," she said gently. "My name is Clara. I work for an organization that helps young talents get recognized. And you really have something special." Emily looked at her, wary but intrigued. She was used to compliments, but what this woman said seemed different. "What do you mean?" she asked timidly. Clara smiled. "I would like to offer you the chance to sing at an event we are organizing. It's nothing too big, but it's an opportunity for you to show what you can do. We can provide everything you need, a stage, a piano, and even musicians to accompany you if you wish." Emily's eyes widened. A stage? Musicians? That seemed so far from what she knew from her songs on the street corner. But before she could respond, a thought crossed her mind. But my grandfather is sick. I can't leave him. Clara nodded with understanding. The event will be held in a venue just around the corner, she said softly. Your grandfather can come see you sing if you like. I'll take care of everything. You just need to be yourself and sing the way you know how. Emily thought for a moment, then turned to her grandfather, who was watching her from the window of their small apartment across the street. He nodded with an encouraging smile. His gaze said it all. He was proud of her, no matter what she chose. Okay, she whispered finally. I accept. In the days that followed, Clara kept her promise. She brought in musicians and helped Emily prepare her songs. The little girl's grandfather attended the rehearsals, his eyes shining with pride at every note his granddaughter played. Gradually, he seemed to regain his strength, as if Emily's voice had the power to return some of the vigor of his youth. The night of the concert arrived faster than Emily had imagined. She stood behind the curtain of the stage, her heart pounding. The room was modest, but full of familiar faces, neighbors, passers-by who had often stopped to listen to her, and even the man who had given her the bill that had changed her life. They had all come to support her. Emily took a deep breath. She glanced one last time at her grandfather, sitting in the front row. His smile encouraged her, and she felt a soothing warmth fill her heart. When the curtain rose and the first notes of the guitar echoed through the room, Emily forgot all her fears. Her voice rose, soft and powerful, transporting her audience to a world of memories, pain, and hope. She sang like she had never sung before, letting herself be carried away by each word, each note, as though she were telling her story one last time. At the end of her performance, there was a moment of silence, then a wave of applause that overwhelmed her. Tears in her eyes, Emily bowed, her heart full of infinite gratitude. She looked at her grandfather, who stood up from his chair to join her on stage, stumbling slightly but standing tall. He embraced her, and they remained like that, under a thunderous applause. That evening marked a turning point in Emily's life. She was noticed by several influential people in the music industry. At the end of the concert, as Emily and her grandfather basked in the warmth of the applause, a woman approached them. She was elegantly dressed, with fiery blonde hair and an aura of confidence that drew attention. Emily recognized her. It was the music producer who had watched her perform on the street. Bravo, Emily, she said enthusiastically. Your voice is exceptional. I'm Patricia, and I represent a label that's looking for authentic artists like you. I'd like to offer you the chance to work together and record your album. Emily, still overwhelmed by emotion, looked at her grandfather. His eyes sparkled with excitement and disbelief. An album? She stammered. But I don't know if I'm ready for that. Patricia smiled, warmth radiating from her. Don't worry, that's completely normal. We have a team that will guide you every step of the way. And most importantly, we want you to be yourself in your music. I can tell you have so much to offer the world. Emily felt overwhelmed by the opportunity before her. She had always dreamed of singing in a studio, but the idea of making an album terrified her. However, her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Follow your heart, my little one. Never let fear stop you. Okay, she finally said, her voice barely audible. Patricia's eyes lit up. Perfect. I'll give you my contact details. We'll arrange a meeting to discuss your vision and musical inspirations. This is going to be incredible. The following days were a whirlwind of excitement and activity. Emily was now surrounded by a dedicated team who helped her organize her ideas. She began to write passionately, drawing from her life, her struggles, and the stories she had lived. Each note she composed became a catharsis, a way to share her world with others. In her small apartment, Emily spent hours scribbling lyrics on sheets of paper while her grandfather sat beside her, listening attentively to every word she wrote. The evenings passed in the sweetness of their companionship, filled with laughter, memories, and melodies. Her grandfather told her stories of his youth, tales of resistance and love that fed Emily's inspiration. One afternoon, as she worked on a new song, Emily received a call from Patricia. "Emily, we've arranged a first meeting to discuss recording your album. This is a big step forward. I'd love for you to come with a few songs you'd like to record." Her heart racing, Emily agreed and began to think about the songs she wanted to present. She decided to bring her favorite one, the one she had written in honor of her grandfather, but also a lighter melody inspired by the simple moments of happiness they shared. On the day of the meeting, Emily arrived at the studio with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The walls were adorned with photographs of famous artists, and the atmosphere was filled with creativity. Patricia welcomed her warmly and introduced her to the team that would work with her: musicians, sound engineers, and even a renowned composer. "Here's our project," Patricia explained. "We want you to feel comfortable. This album must reflect who you truly are." Emily took a deep breath and, with the encouragement of her grandfather, who was watching from the corner of the room, began to play her songs. The first note resonated in the studio, and she felt transported. The magic of the music took over. Every word she sang seemed to carry a piece of her soul. The team members listened attentively, their faces illuminated by emotion. At the end of her performance, a suspended silence enveloped the room, then erupted in applause. The team members were visibly moved. "Emily, you have an incredible gift," said the composer, a smile on his lips. "I can feel this album is going to touch the hearts of many people." Encouraged by this feedback, Emily began working with the team on the recording. She discovered a new world, full of challenges and joys. She learned to fine-tune her compositions, experiment with musical arrangements, and collaborate with other artists. Every recording session became a new adventure, and Emily thrived in this creative environment. But amid all this excitement, she never forgot her grandfather. Sometimes, she brought him to the studio, where he would sit in a corner, a proud smile on his face. They shared moments of companionship, listening together to the recordings and discussing the stories that inspired them. One evening, as they were heading home after a long day at the studio, Emily turned to her grandfather. "You know, I could never have done all this without you. It's thanks to your support and your stories that I found my voice." He smiled at her, moved. "You did all the work, my little one. You have that fire in you. Never forget that your music is powerful. It can bring joy and hope to those who listen to you." These words echoed in her heart as she continued working on her album. Emily became more and more involved in every detail, choosing the arrangements, the instruments, and even the illustrations for the cover. She wanted every element to reflect her story, her journey, and above all, the love she had for her grandfather. As the album took shape, word began to spread through the music industry. Emily was invited to interviews and podcasts, where she spoke about her journey and her inspirations. Every time she told her story, she felt a connection with her audience, an echo of her own struggles and determination. The release date of her album was approaching, and she was preparing for a big launch event. Patricia had organized a show at a concert hall, and everyone was eager to hear Emily's music. On the night of the launch, the venue was packed. Emily, dressed in a simple yet elegant dress, stood on stage, her heart racing. She looked at the audience, recognizing familiar faces among the crowd. Her grandfather was there, sitting in the front row, his radiant smile comforting her. When the first song began, a wave of emotion overwhelmed her. She sang with passion, each note being a tribute to her journey, her grandfather, and all those who had supported her. The applause rang out, and Emily knew this night would be etched forever in her heart. At the end of the performance, she addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This music is the result of my struggles, my dreams, and above all, the love I have for my grandfather, who has always encouraged me. I hope it touches you the way it has touched me." Tears in her eyes, Emily watched her grandfather, who stood up to applaud her enthusiastically. It was a moment of triumph and gratitude, a celebration of life, music, and the unbreakable bonds that connected them. In that moment, she knew that this was just the beginning of her musical journey. The album was more than just a project. It was a promise to herself to keep singing for those who listened, to tell stories, and to share the light she had found in the darkness. Through her album, Emily shared not only her voice but also her story, touching the hearts of many. Her success was not only the result of her talent, but also her ability to remain authentic and true to herself, all while honoring her roots. Emily's story reminds us that we should never underestimate the power of our dreams and the importance of the bonds that unite us to those we love. By singing for herself and for her grandfather, Emily paved the way for a bright future, proving that every note can carry a message of hope and strength.